Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman from Satori Prime. I wanted to kind of riff off of what I shared with you, I think it was a couple of podcasts ago, about my creation. And if you haven't seen that, I did a whole podcast about how to create and manifest from nothing. I talked about how I brought my dream car to my driveway after just intending it for 5.5 months. And I wanted kind of work off of that theme, but off of something that I think people struggle with the most when we deal with them as students. One of the biggest conversations people have is either time, or I would say the biggest one is money. People always have a conversation around money. What's interesting is whether they're poor or rich, certain people just have weird conversations around money. So I want to share a story with you during this podcast, and I'm going to interlace some of the distinctions and things that I garnered from that experience so that hopefully you can start looking at your own life and how you interact with your money conversations. And I say money conversations for a very specific reason, because they are just that. See, the way that you operate is that your money situation is the way it is. So I'm going to say that again. Your money situation to you occurs like that is just the way it is. What you might be unaware of, and what I'm hoping to bring awareness to today, is the fact that all of those conversations that you have around money, usually having to do with you don't have enough of it, right, actually stem from different conversations that you've created over the past. Okay? Then I'm going to actually share with you a really cool exercise on how you can go about breaking your money habits. Okay? So here's the story. I'm 23 years old. Okay, and I just graduated from school not too long ago, had a crappy little secretarial type, bitch job, whatever. Hated it. After about 4.5 months, walked into the boss's office and was like, look, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. This is just not for me. I just felt like, this wasn't going anywhere. It was very corporate, just very not me. So I came home and told my parents, guess what? I just quit my job, which let me tell you, they loved, right? Now, my dad was working a construction business at the time. So as I was sending out resumes and trying to find something new to do, I actually asked him if I could go work with him as just like a laborer, right? Putting up sheetrock, painting walls, ripping out wallpaper, all the things that he was hiring other people to do. Pay me the same amount, but just let me, while I'm doing this whole trying to get a new job thing, at least I can learn something. So I end up working on this gentleman's house, this gentleman by the name of David, and he looks at me, and I'm not trying to be racist or anything like that by saying this, but a lot of laborers around New York tend to be Latin Americans, right? So like, people from South America. So he sees this, 20-something-year-old kid, white, working, and starts having a conversation with me, and then he's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And then he found out that I was my dad's son, so Alex's son, and my dad was building his house. And we just started talking. He's asked me what I went to school for, what I want to do. We had a good rapport. And he said, you know what? I work for a commercial real estate lending institution out here in Hackensack. I'd like to bring you in for an interview. And I was like, that's freaking sweet, right? So I go in for an interview, and we meet for lunch, and I actually left his house to go meet him for lunch, and I was sanding sheetrock, like the spackle on sheetrock. So I had gray, just like gray dust all in my hair. I'm disgusting. I show up to lunch, try to clean myself up, but clearly not good enough. So we had a joke about it. And he basically tells me during lunch that what he actually invited me for is not an interview for that company, but he's actually branching out in about a couple of months and he's opening up his own firm. Would I want to be the sales rep for that company when he opens it? And I was like, are you kidding me? Yes, absolutely. So I come home, I'm super excited. I share my dad and he's like, absolutely not. You're going to get a real job. It's only commission. You don't know how you're going to make money, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First of all, this is a real job. Second of all, I know what I'm worth. And I know that if I put in the effort, I'm going to get paid. Okay? So basically he does the whole dad thing. Like, if you're not getting money in the next 3 months, you're quitting and you're going to find a new job. I was like, whatever, right? So start this new position. About 2 weeks into this new position. Now, keep in mind, I know nothing about commercial real estate. I don't even know the terms. Basically, the first month was just trying to understand all these terms like CTV, LTV, appraisal, all this kind of title, like stuff that I just never was aware of. So me and my brother go to an introduction to a course called the Wisdom Course, part of the Landmark Education Division. And we've been putting it up for a long time because we just knew, we had met the leader, we knew we loved him, we knew that once we heard about it, we're going to want to do it. The big problem was that the course was about $3,000 per person. And at the time, my brother was in school, he was 21, I was 23 with a new job and making no money at the time. And we finally said, you know what, whatever, let's just go to the introduction, let's just hear what it's about. We don't have to sign up. We go and we sit in this introduction, and halfway through, my brother and I look at each other, and we say, yeah, we have to do this thing. And we didn't even know how. But my brother, I was actually driving him to go back to school, so I had to take him to the bus to Port Authority in New York City. So we leave the introduction early. We basically call my parents and say, please, 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 would you cover us? We'll pay you back, we promise. And their answer, as good parents should, were like, no. You know, you want it, work for it. So right away, kind of disappointed, whatever, and I had just bought a new car with them that I went 50-50 on. And this is how badly I wanted to be in the course. I was like, what if I sell my car? Can I then use that money to pay for this course? And they were like, look, it's your car, you can do whatever you want, but I think that's a terrible idea. So I thought about it some more and I was like, wait, I just got a new job, I need to get to that job, right? Like, this is going to put a whole wrinkle in this plan of mine. But what sprung us to really want to be in this course, just a little side note, is there were a couple of conversations there that really resonated, but one of the ones was a conversation around dealing with fear. And how after going through this course, fear will transform as not something that stops you, but something that fuels you. And if you've ever heard Guy and I speak, I think we've spoken about it in some of our beer talks, we now actually use fear as a target, as a guide that strings us along to the next thing that we need to tackle in order to grow and develop as humans and in our business. Okay? So that was just one of those conversations, and I remember it resonated with us. We kept talking about it, and we really wanted to be in that course. So I end up dropping off my brother, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go back. Like, it's 10, 15 minutes away. Let me go back. Maybe they're still there. I go back, and the leader says something that just so hit home to me. He said, look, don't ever do something you don't want to do. That would just be dumb, right? Like, if you don't want to do something, don't force yourself to do it. That's just dumb. But if you want to do something and there's something stopping you, like a but, you know, I want to do this but, then what you want to start looking at is, what is that but? And what he said was really smart. He said that but is nothing new. It's not something that is just apparent in this situation. It's a but that stopped you from doing a million things in your life. It stopped you from taking vacations. It stopped you from taking certain opportunities. It stopped you from taking jobs. It stopped you from maybe having kids, getting married, whatever it is. That but has been around for a long time. And my only but at that time was money. I said to myself, I would love to do this course, but I don't have money. How many of you have ever had that conversation about anything in your life? Every single one of you should be like, yep, I have. Because pretty much 99.99999% of the population has that type of conversation. So that's the conversation I had. What he had me realize in a very quick discussion was that this right here and now was an opportunity to get rid of that but once and for all. Remember when we started this, I said that money is nothing but a conversation. Well, guess what my conversation was? That I didn't have enough money. And that conversation was stopping me from doing so many things I've wanted in my life. So at 23 years old, I became aware in that moment that that but could either be trounced at that moment or could run the rest of my life. So I chose in that moment to crush that but once and for all. To never have a money conversation going forward. So here's what I did. At that moment, I knew that what we had to come up with for me and my brother, because I had to pay for both of us, he had no money, and I only wanted to do it with him. I didn't want to do this course on my own. We had to come up with $500 each as a deposit. The remaining $2,500 or maybe $2,400, whatever it was, we had to come up with over, I think, something like a 4-month period, somewhere thereabouts, right? So I said to myself, you know what? I have one credit card. It's got about $1,500 balance on it. Let me throw the 2 deposits on there and I'll freaking figure out how to pay for this in the next 4 months. And in that moment, I remember sitting down and signing the paperwork. There's a pretty funny side note. I actually asked the leader, Paul, I said, hey, I'm going to pay for me and my brother. He said, well, how old are you? I said, 23. He's like, okay, you're fine. He said, how old's your brother? I said, 21. He goes, well, he can't get in. I was like, what do you mean he can't get in? He said, he's too young. I was like, what do you mean he's too young? He's like, well, the adult brain actually doesn't get fully developed till 23, so we don't even deal with people younger than 23. You're literally at the cutoff. I said, Paul, listen, I'm not willing to do this course without my brother. So he kind of took a step back and was like, wow, okay. He said, well, I have to interview him. So I literally got my brother on the phone. He got interviewed by Paul on the spot, and Paul was like, you know what? He's fine. You guys can sign up. So we end up signing up, or I'm sitting there and I'm filling out the paperwork, and I remember in that moment so much anxiety and so much fear. You know that feeling in your stomach? It almost feels like, I don't know if you've ever jumped out of a plane, it almost feels like right before you're about to jump out of a plane or right before you go down on a roller coaster. It's like all that energy gets built up and pent up. That was the experience. And I knew that whatever I was doing in that moment was going to be a monumentally breakthrough moment in my life. So I do this thing. I walk out of the room. I am flying. To tell you I'm flying, like, I know it sounds so stupid, but it's like, I knew that I had just crushed one of the biggest conversations stopping me in my life. In that moment, instantly, because I chose to do something that was so against my brain, so against my ego, so against every core of my being. And I said, you know what? I'm not listening to that crap. I'm creating a new version of me right now. And when I walked out, you know when you do something that you were so afraid of and you get through it on the other side? Do you know that feeling? It's just like alive and powerful. And you just feel like you can take on anything because you now know yourself to be something that you didn't know yourself to ever exist before. And it's such a moving feeling. That's why we talk a lot about following your fear. You know, that was an amazing lesson for me at that time. So now, right, I call my brother, super excited. I share the news. He's like, are you crazy? This is amazing. We have this whole conversation. And I'm like, okay, well, now I have to figure out in the next 4 months how to do this. So I go back to work, and mind you, I've been at this job for 2 months. I know nothing about how to sell loans, commercial loans. And I sit there and I take this goal sheet and I say, okay, by this date, and I think it was like March something, maybe February or March, I had to come up with not only my payment, but my brother's payment as well. So we're talking about say $5,000, okay? So I said, here's what I need to come up with by the date. And then I worked backwards, setting up specific measurable results that I would have had to have met, at month 1, month 2, month 3, and month 4. And created a game, and in that game created weekly action plan and a daily action goal. So I knew that the way that I was going to bring in business was at the time to call a list of brokers to have those brokers send me deals. So I got this script written with the help of my partner, and he just showed me the script, and I literally sat there, and my goal was every single day make 100 phone calls. Every single day, 100 phone calls. I did this for months at a time. Guess what my first 100 were? Horrible. Guess what my second 100 were? Horrible. My first 1,000 were probably garbage. But you know what? You do 1,000 calls, you figure out a few things here and there, right? Not only that, I worked my ass off because I had this amazing, amazing goal that I knew I needed to accomplish. And in the first 2 months of me being at that company, I brought in the first, second, third, and fourth deal of the entire company. Meanwhile, there was another expert, that was the partner at the time, and he had been brought in because he had this huge Rolodex. But the first 4 deals that came in through the company and closed were mine. And I want to show you something real quick. So if you're watching on YouTube, then you'll see this. If you're just listening in a car or on audio, then you probably won't, but maybe I'll just throw up a picture with this in the thing. Hopefully you can see this. That is a check that is dated January 25th, 2005. So this is about 3 months before I needed to make payment, okay? To my company, which at the time was called Kesef Corp, for the amount of $12,910. I made $12,910 in my first 2 months at my new job. I crushed the goal that I needed to meet with my game in half the time, and I raised more than double the amount of money I needed to do at the age of 23 years old. Here's what I want to leave you with. When the reason is big enough, the how becomes easy. When you have a big enough why, the how will be easy. I created a massive why. I not only created a massive why, I literally ripped my being in half. I literally put a stake in that conversation once and for all. Money is no longer going to be the thing that runs my life. And you know what? It never was since. And I'm not saying that I automatically catapulted myself into millionaire status and everything was roses. In fact, if you've listened to anything before, you know that 3 years ago, my house was in foreclosure. Okay? Money was not something that just once I did this, started falling from the sky. But you know what? Even in that time, when I had nothing, I was literally living on unemployment, money was still not a conversation. Because you know why? I knew that if my why was big enough, I could create the financial situation that I needed in my life. And so that powerful, powerful moment was a massive shift for me. I'm so blessed to have had it happen at 23. And I wanted to share that story with you because I shared it with a few people here and there, and they're like, I just saw their eyes kind of open. I want you to understand that if this is a conversation that is stopping you in your life, it's not going to miraculously alter. It takes you doing some incredible feat, throwing your hat over the fence, jumping off a cliff and figuring it out on the way down to alter these kind of that is the way life is conversations. Because that moment for me transformed everything. I will never be the same after that moment. And that check, which is why I've kept it for almost 10 years now, is the reason, is the proof that that can happen. So I want to just leave you with this little exercise. If you have conversations around money, like most of us walk around like, oh, I don't have enough for that. I don't have enough for that. I don't have enough for that. I don't have enough for that, right? You know that conversation. What you're in essence doing is you're programming your brain to not have enough. You get that? Very powerful. You're programming your brain as you think these thoughts to find things. Your brain is like a radio transmitter. So what you're finding things in life that you can't afford. I can't afford that, I can't afford that, can't afford that, can't afford that, right? So I want you to play a completely different game in reprogramming your brain. And this is what we're going to do. You're going to either put a $100 bill or a $100 check in your pocket every single day. And you're going to walk around and look at things that you can buy with that $100 bill. I can afford that, 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 I can afford that. You get it? Very simple. Very, very powerful. Because in that moment, what you're going to start doing is reprogramming your brain to a concept of, I can afford these things. I can have that. And slowly but surely, you're going to watch as miracles start to happen in your life. Having said all that, here's the biggest piece. It's going to take you doing something that scares the shit out of you. You know what it is. As I'm talking about it, you're like, no, I'm never doing that. That's the thing I want you to go do. That's the thing I want you to go do, because on the other side of that is magic. It's the life you've dreamed of. So if you're willing to go and grab it, it's there for you. I promise this stuff works. It never fails. How many people are willing to do that? How many people are willing to jump off a cliff and figure out how to fly on the way down? Not many. And guess what? That's why the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, that's why those people get rewarded. So trust in energy, have faith in whatever you believe. I don't care. But know that if you take that kind of action, you will be massively rewarded, and you will stop this stupid money conversation from running your life once and for all. So I hope this podcast made a difference for you. Clearly, that conversation made a massive difference for me in my life, my family's life. So hopefully you can take something away from this and really do the work. Don't just listen and be like, oh, that's a great idea, but do the work. End this thing once and for all. And if you do, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review. Let me know what your money conversation is. I'd love to even help you. So just let me know how this thing altered you. Let me know what you're taking on or what you did to combat it. Let's build a community of people that fight this stupid conversation once and for all. Because at the end of the day, money is nothing more than dirty paper with dead presidents on it. It's your conversations about it that have it be a specific way. All right. Love you all. We'll talk real soon. I'll see you on the next Performance Enhancing Podcast. Have an amazing, amazing day.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to satoriprime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.